Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around the world. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Blackjack. Today, I decided to take all 12 of my commander decks out, pick 5 cards for each of them, and give you a tour of what I'm playing, what I personally own, the cards that I enjoy, and all of my decks. They're not in any particular power level order or ranking of how much I like them or anything like that. A couple of them are fairly new, and a couple of them have undergone significant changes. And then there's a few that have basically had no changes in a very long time and probably aren't going to have any anytime soon either because I love where they're at. But as far as right now, to be honest, there's pretty much nothing that I would change off the top of my head. There's no decks that I don't like. I've been playing Commander since 2011. My first deck tech was in 2011 on this channel. It was Mael the Anima. So I've been playing Commander for almost 15 years. Magic for around 20. What am I? Like 23 years I've been playing Magic. So obviously started in 60 card formats, standard, legacy, extended back in the day. Um, Being able to find a balance between competitive Magic as well as playing with 3 other people has been amazing. Commander's one of my favorite hobbies, and genuinely this is just a love letter to Commander, to my decks, to my friends, my play group. I absolutely love it. It's my favorite thing to do. Um, Without any further ado, let's get started. So, I don't have these in any particular order as I mentioned, but we are going to be starting with Garb. So Garb is currently my CDH deck, and just to be honest, as with all of my videos, I'm going to be yapping a lot. This is going to be the quarter 3 uh, review of my decks, the tour of my decks. I'm going to look to do one of these probably every 3-ish months, so you guys get an update once a quarter throughout the year, so you can keep track of what I'm playing. And if you're interested in any of these decks and you want to see a more detailed breakdown of them, they're all on my channel. Every single one of these decks has had a deck tech, I believe, in the past 4 months. So if there's one that you really like, just go ahead and look through my recently posted videos. You'll be able to find it fairly easily. So, Glarb. I used to play Timnacrom. I would say Garb and Timnacrom both fill a role of basically being 2 pseudo control decks in the format. Timnacrom definitely a little less. Garb for sure though. This is through and through a control deck. There are shells that you can build to be more quick, but I have always enjoyed Commander and I've always enjoyed Control as long as I've been playing Magic. So that's the shell I decided to go with. So the 5 cards I've picked out for you. Rhystic Study, pretty obvious why I chose it. It is the best card in Commander right now, without a doubt, whether that be competitive or otherwise. It is basically what is causing all of the mid-range gameplay in CDH right now alongside Mystic Remora, though we are tending to tick a little bit further towards fast combo, at least as of late. But this is the kind of Magic I like to play. Doomsday. So this is a Doomsday deck. This does have Doomsday lines, but all of them essentially win through Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle is essentially the only win condition in the deck aside from Mnemonic Betrayal and just hoping to get there based off other people's graveyards. But Thassa's Oracle is the main win con. You can get there via Doomsday. You can get there via console. So there's multiple lines, but either way, Doomsday is the main, or Oracle is the main route to victory. The other 2 pieces I chose, Mana Vault. This is the deck that has pretty much all of my fast mana in it, and that's for good reason. Obviously, there are going to be games where you can possibly win on turn 1, turn 2, fairly consistently, and that normally comes off the back of playing cards like this. So, yes, this card's expensive. No, I do not play it in any casual decks whatsoever, and I never will. But in CDH, it's an absolute staple. Force of Will, the name of the game in competitive Commander and realistically any control deck is counter spells and controlling what your opponents are allowed to do. Free counter spells like Force of Will are premier and some of the best things that you can be doing in order to protect yourself or allow yourself to go through for a win. So, in a shell, that is Garb. Next up, let's just go with Kami. Kami is probably, let's see if I'm looking at all my decks here. I would say Kami is in contention with my favorite deck that I've ever played. And I actually didn't build this. I traded it with a personal friend years back who had it. I loved the idea of it, and I've made a lot of changes to it ever since. But Kami is looking to do one thing and one thing only, and that is draw the whole table a bunch of cards. So one of the cards that I've put out is Dictative Crufix. The major way to win the game, and the only way to win the game, is Labman, as well as the Jace that allows you to win if you have no cards in your library. But we're literally playing, I would say probably like 15 pieces of Dictated Crufix type effects. Temple Bell, Howling Mine, Font of Mythos, you name it, we're playing it. We almost never win the game. I would say if I've played this deck 100 times, I've won with it maybe 4 times. This is a deck that I pull out when I'm either playing with newer players or I've already won multiple games or even one game that night, or people want to try out a deck that they've recently built, because the whole premise of this is basically everybody draws cards. On an average game with Kami, I am probably drawing everybody close to 60 to 75% of their deck before the game is over. So it's just a love letter commander, and it allows my friends to go absolutely nuts and have fun and have tons and tons of cards. I used to play, I believe his name is Kaineo Centiro of Miletus, whatever the Sans Black group hug deck was. The reason I ended up taking that apart was it's too dangerous to add green to group hug, because as soon as you start accelerating other people's mana, that's when the game starts to end more quickly. If you just give them a ton of cards and make them make choices with restricted mana, that's totally fine, because you can still play control elements, you can still play a control game plan, but if you also accelerate their mana, it's nearly impossible to keep them in check. So, the cards that I've chosen down here, probably, let me see if I can change the lighting really quick for you guys. I don't know if this is going to make it better or worse. Kind of a mixture, but we'll rock it. Let's see if that's better. Yeah, that'll work. So, probably my 2 favorite cards in the deck. Ishin the Mind Cage is probably my favorite card in the deck. 7 mana, all creatures get -X and -0, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Very often, we have tons of ways to have unlimited hand size. I would say I'm putting this in the mid to late game. I'm deploying this spell with backup, and I would say on average, creatures are getting around -10 power. So this is just a, a permanent that basically makes all creatures no power on the board, and it is one of those ways that you can actually stall the game out enough to win with the Laboratory Maniac. Hardly ever happens, but it is a sweet card. The second one is Silent Arbiter. No more than one creature may attack each combat, no more than one creature may block each combat. Plus, this card is just gorgeous. This lighting doesn't do it justice, but the foiling with like the purple and the gold, the metallic tints is super, super good. And then Forbid. So we do have to have some control in here. If we just let everyone run rampant with all the cards we gave them, the game would probably end sooner than we want it to. So we do play some control elements to try to make sure that we're at least stopping the I win buttons, but still allowing them to have fun. So that is Kami. Again, win percentage probably sub 10%, but yeah, at the same time, probably my favorite deck to play, and every time I loan this deck out to a friend to play, they echo the exact same thoughts. They're like, this is amazing, this is so fun. I really, really recommend that you look at your collection of commander cards and your decks, and you try to fill out more spaces. So if all of your decks have win conditions and are super powerful, that's awesome. But if you haven't tried something like this yet, where it's a little bit more chaotic and you're playing group hug and everyone gets to have fun, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the most enjoyable ways to play Commander. Next, we'll go with Emmett. So, if you have been watching my videos recently, I actually just did a build on this on my channel for a viewer who was looking for this deck, and I genuinely liked it so much I decided to put it together myself. Emmett is basically enters or attacks, draw and discard a card, so it is Reanimator. And everything we're doing, we're looking to do out of the graveyard. So the budget is pretty low. When I originally put the deck together for... God, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But when I originally put the deck together for the YouTube channel, I believe the viewer asked for sub 200, and I got it to around 175. Mine's probably a little bit higher, just because I already had cards in my collection that fit in the deck. But honestly, it's not much more. I've goldfished it a couple times, and I really, really like what it's doing, so I'm extremely excited to play it. Buried Alive, pretty obviously the best card in the deck, especially in any Commander Reanimator theme. There's tons of routes you can go. The deck does play Wonder, so that's probably one that you would always get. And then Metamorphosis Fanatic would be the second one I'd always get. It is a Reanimator target that allows you to reanimate a second thing out of the graveyard. And then we do have, I would say, probably like 6 really good Reanimator targets. And you can just kind of pick and choose based on the state of the game, who you're playing against, the power level of the table, all that. I would say this is a bracket 2 deck through and through. Rona is a good example of what the deck's trying to do. A lot of draw and discard effects. Obviously, the namesake of the theme of the deck, Reanimate itself. Deep Analysis. So I am trying to weaponize my graveyard beyond just getting creatures out. Things like Forbidden Alchemy, Deep Analysis. There's tons of ways to mill stuff into the graveyard but still get paid out by being able to reuse it. So cards like this that typically aren't very good in Commander can actually be pretty great in a deck like this when you only have to pay 2 mana to draw 2 cards out of the graveyard. And then one of the targets, Hullbreaker Horror, probably one of my favorites. I would say it's close between him and Nezahal as my 2 favorite targets for the deck. There's no like I win the game targets in here. So I do have like a Razaketh the Foul-Blooded in my collection, but I didn't put it in here because that's just not the route I'm trying to go with this deck. I'm looking to have a good time and just kind of reanimate things that must be dealt with, but don't necessarily just win the game on the spot. But again, I ended up building this in person after making the deck tech for it on YouTube. The deck is super sweet and should go to show you guys who watch my channel. Um, I take this serious. When I put your decks together, I put a lot of effort into them, a lot of thought into them, and so much so that I actually ended up building one of them. So next we'll go with Pant Laza. Jurassic Park is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I grew up watching it. I've always been infatuated with dinosaurs. For a hot second when I was a kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist until I found out that you were going to be hot and sweaty outside all the time, and then I said, forget it. So this is as close as I'm going to get to that, and I promise you this is going to be better than the latest Jurassic Park movie. Pant Laza, it goes back and forth between him and Gishath as the commander, but I've felt that Pant Laza is a bit better. I do have the Secret Lair version of Gishath as well, so they're both super sweet. Gishath is definitely, I'm going to try to win the game right now, and if I get board wiped, I'm dead. Pant Laza is more of an engine, and if you've watched my channel, you know I love building engine pieces. I love making sure that my deck is turning and getting the job done in multiple ways rather than just trying to win at once. So Pant Laza allows you to explore. A lot of the exploring that we're trying to do is looking for stuff like this. So Elemental Bond allows us to continue to draw cards and keep the party going, and that's what allows Pant Laza to have staying power, whereas Gishath is, I'm going to try to win right now. Pant Laza is, let's take it slow and let's build up. Chroma's Will, we need to have a way to protect the dinosaurs from a second extinction level event, and this is probably the best way in the deck to do it. Things like this and Teferi's Protection are absolutely necessary in pretty much any thematic deck that's based on a creature type, whether that's zombies, vampires, dinosaurs, merfolk, whatever. Normally their biggest weakness is getting board wiped because you have to commit a lot to the board to be dangerous. So it's important that you have protection for these kind of game plans. Atali, aka Tyrannosaurus Rex, I did get the Jurassic Park Secret Lair, obviously, and again, this deck is more just an ode to my love for dinosaurs. I have a ton of cool art in here, and even if I'm losing the game, I can just kind of do this with my hand and get that little hit of dopamine. Teferi's Protection, how did you get in here? I put this and a Chroma's Will? Well, it's all the same. The deck doesn't go a whole lot of other directions other than make dinosaurs, avoid extinction, and then draw cards so you can make more dinosaurs. But that is Pant Laza. I've played vampires, I've played merfolk, I've played zombies, I've played so many creature types, but dinosaurs is just kind of my personal favorite. Though I have thought about putting zombies together lately. Bilbo, the Birthday Boy. I do like Lord of the Rings. I grew up with it. I never read the books. I'm not fanatical about it. So I didn't actually build this until probably quite a while after Lord of the Rings was released. But I've always had an interest in life gain decks in Commander, and I've just never been impressed by any of the commanders that do it. I think the closest I got to building one was Guillaume Master Chef. He did some interesting things, but at the end of the day, it still wasn't that powerful of a deck to me. I really love Bilbo. This is basically just gain life the deck, and then eventually get the party started and dip out. So This does not have a win condition when you activate Bilbo. I would say that's its biggest weakness. I've probably activated him a handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 times, and I get to dump 25 creatures onto the board, gain hundreds and hundreds of life, but I actually can't win the game that turn because I don't have a way to give my creatures haste in here. That is by design. I wasn't really looking to do that with the deck or make that a very powerful possibility. This is probably around a bracket 2, I would say. All that, and I show Aetherflux. So I used to play Bolas' Citadel. I ended up taking it out, and Aetherflux is, I would say, the best win condition and one of the only win conditions. So obviously being able to get to hundreds and hundreds of life allows you to just laser people out of the game, and it's one of the most consistent ways to actually end the game, because without it, you're trying to win the game with pretty much like a bunch of 1/1s that gain you life when a creature enters, and that can be fairly difficult. Enduring Innocence is a great example of what this deck is trying to do. So it's basically profiting off of creatures with power 2 or less. So there is a big theme of power 2 or less creatures in the deck to benefit off things like Enduring Innocence, things like the Battle of Bywater, and then also we have things like Dusk Dawn in here. But I really love one-sided board wipes. So back when I started to play Commander in 2011, your options were pretty much Wrath of God and Damnation. And that was fine and dandy for back then, but these days there's been so many board wipes printed that it's important that you try to look for ones that still benefit your game plan. So again, this says destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. I would say there's probably only like 5 or 6 creatures in the entire deck that are power 3 or greater. So more often than not, this is destroy all creatures you don't control and then make some foods. Essence Warden, this is the glue that holds the deck together. We're pretty much playing every Essence Warden type effect in the deck. Notably, we're not playing the ones that say when a creature enters under your control. We're only playing the ones that say when a creature enters in general. I think the ones under your control aren't quite good enough, at least for me personally, but obviously these ones are absolutely insane. I've made the mistake of missing my triggers about pretty much every time I've played the deck, sometimes for multiple turns in a row. So if you are going to play a deck like this, please for the love of God pay attention to your triggers. Finally, Delighted Halfling. If you've been watching my deck techs for a while, you know that when I play base green, I have a pretty set 10 pieces of ramp that I always play. Let's just test myself and see if I get it off the top of my head. Soul Rain, Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, Nature's Lore, Farseek, Rampant Growth, Sakura Tribe Elder, 3 visits. Bane, baby. 10 pieces. However, when you are playing a commander that's 3 mana, it's important to forego some of those in order to play 1 mana ramp. So things like Birds of Paradise, things like Delighted Halfling, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Finhorn Elves, Llanowar Elves are all in here. So we can try to get Bilbo out on turn 2. Accelerating Bilbo to turn 2 is much, much stronger than turn 3 for obvious reasons. So that is kind of the ramp package I have in here instead of my traditional ramp. But that is Bilbo. No Crater Hoof or anything like that. When the party gets started, normally people just concede the game because I'm gaining so much life that nobody wants to do the math. Let's move on to Go Shintai. So, pretty much as long as I've had multiple decks, I've had a enchantment and an artifact deck in my repertoire. I love enchantments. Back during Theros, I was still playing Standard, and one of my favorite decks played Eidolon of Blossoms and Doomwake Giant. These are a love letter to the Standard of old, to Theros. This is one of my favorite decks of all time, and I had to find a deck that was able to utilize them. So Doomwake Giant is a great example for the deck of weaponizing your enchantments and making use of them beyond their basic abilities. So Eidolon does the same thing, but obviously the polar opposite. Doomwake is affecting everyone else's board, and consistently this is board wiping almost every turn everybody else's board. And then Eidolon is simply looking to draw cards. This has pretty much every Enchantress effect in the deck other than the one that's like 70 bucks. I think it's Argothian. I never ended up buying that, but all the other ones it definitely plays. Go Shintai, obviously he's at the helm. This is a shrine deck. I've had tons of different enchantment decks. I've stuck with shrines for quite a long time. It used to be fairly powered down and have a gates win condition with Maze's End, but when I ended up kind of renewing a lot of my decks earlier this year, it got a bunch of lands that I had in my trade binder, and I was able to kind of soup up the mana base really well, and I ended up ditching the gate win condition and just playing better mana. Dawn's Truce. So much like a creature theme deck, this is an enchantment themed deck that is going to commit a lot of enchantments to the board, and if we ended up getting board wiped, we're pretty much completely out of the game. So whether it's Dawn's Truce, Teferi's Protection, Heroic Intervention, you need to be accelerating and drawing cards with things like Eidolon of Blossoms to find one of these to make sure you don't just die to one austere command, one enchantment destruction effect. Solitary Confinement, the lock that everybody loves. So this basically is the most powerful card in the deck. If you can get this out, yes, you have to skip your draw step, but it gives you Shroud and prevents all damage dealt to you. So this is also kind of a Pillow Fort deck. It does play things like Propaganda and Ghostly Prison, and this pretty much gives you inevitability. You feel like Thanos once this is on the field. If you can get this alongside like two Enchantress type effects like Eidolon of Blossoms, it pretty much allows you to lock the game up to the point where you can't be hurt, and every time you cast an enchantment you're drawing multiple cards, so you always have fodder to discard to it. Sanctum of All. This is a shrine deck. It plays all of the shrines, and being able to find those with Sanctum of All is super fun. I have not gotten Sanctum of All out very often, but when I do, the game kind of just ends the next turn. If I get to trigger like 4 or 5 shrines twice, I just get so unbelievably ahead of the table that it's pretty much time to call it quits. Let's move on to artifacts since we just did enchantments. So this is Shorikai. It was Brea for a while, but I ended up going back to Shorikai. Extremely powerful. I already mentioned this in his deck tech video. I think he's probably the best commander printed in a number of years, if you ignore this guy. But other than him, he's probably one of the most powerful things you can be doing, especially in an artifact-based deck. And when I played Brea, I just found myself missing card draw in the command zone, missing advantage in the command zone. I ended up going back to him. If you've watched my deck, the main win condition, we play a ton of tutors. So I've said this a bunch of times in my videos, but I traditionally do not play tutors in any of my decks unless they're extremely high power level, like bracket 4, bracket 5. This I make an exception because I only allow myself to tutor for one artifact, and that is the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. So the main win condition is not actually winning the game with this deck. The main win condition is crafting Exodia, getting out Urza Lord Protector and the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, and then flipping them into Urza Planeswalker is my Xbox achievement. Win the game on the spot. I've done it. The commander, or I'm sorry, the Planeswalker is actually very powerful, but for the amount of work it takes to get him out, he's not as good as you'd think. He doesn't just win the game on the spot, which you think he would for 2 cards and what is this, 5 mana, 8 mana, and then another 7. You're investing 15 mana into this game plan to flip it over. So you're in Emrakul the Aeon's Torn mana cost territory, and he pretty much just flips over and draws a couple cards. So it's not as powerful as you'd think, but this is my win condition in the deck just to have some fun. There are other ways to win the game. I've picked 2 here. Well, I've picked 1 here and then 1 way to get it back. Illustrious Wanderglyph is probably the best token generator in the deck. Making gnomes and then pumping them up is probably the most consistent way to winning the game in this deck. And then Salvation Engine I picked. There is a bunch of recursion in the graveyard, so it's probably my favorite one just because it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at this thing. Plus it also buffs your other artifact creatures by +2/+2. So if you happen to have these out in tandem, then Wanderglyph is making 1/1 gnomes that are turning into 3/3s that are turning into 5/5s, and then you can obviously crew the engine to buy artifacts back out of the graveyard. So I would say the real win condition is making a bunch of gnomes, a bunch of constructs, recurring stuff out of the graveyard, and then just slowly beating everyone to death with robots. But the secret alternative win con is Exodia. Next, let's go to Rograk, son of Rograk. So, this is an equipment deck. I really enjoy playing equipments. I think everyone enjoys playing the swords. Sword of blank and blank. Fill the blanks with whatever your favorite one is. There's a ton of them that have been printed. I like all of them. I play all of them in here. I built this deck alongside Arden, and I used to play SRAM. SRAM was pretty powerful. I thought Rog Arden was going to be good, probably on par with SRAM. It ended up being way, way stronger than SRAM. I guess I was just naive to the fact that Rograk is 0 mana and Arden equips your equipment for free, which is obvious because that's both what they say on the card. But there's been multiple games where, you know, I'm getting Colossus Hammer out on like turn 2, turn 3 equipped to Rograk, and I'm hitting for like 11, 10 commander damage with Menace and Trample and First Strike, and I'm just ending the game super fast. I find it extremely funny. It's one of my most powerful decks, and I just like the fact that not many decks these days win with commander damage, but that is the main win condition with this one. We are trying to win with a Kobold Warrior that is base power and toughness 0/1, and I really enjoy that. Divine Reckoning, so this was kind of based off my original equipment shell of SRAM. I think, again, this goes back to the one-sided board wipe conversation. Being able to keep your SRAM and be able to deal with like a bunch of other creatures on the board is very, very powerful for you. Sunforger, so probably I would say the best equipment in the deck just because it's so multifaceted. But being able to unequip this and kind of go get something to deal with any situation is extremely unique for a red and white deck and extremely powerful. An example of something we can do is go get like a Flare Fortitude. So just like the artifact deck and the enchantment deck, this deck is very, very weak to mass wipe of artifacts, and being able to unequip Sunforger and just go get something like this and save all your stuff is absolutely insane and very important to actually closing the game out. Hammer of Nazan, one of the backup Ardens essentially that allows you to equip equipment for free and then also give indestructible. So once you start getting swords and hammers on your Rograk, the game is pretty much only a matter of time before you're able to close it out. But much more powerful than I expected, and a lot of fun. Very straightforward, though. Ishin. So, one of the most recent additions. This is basically just tokens, and then winning via combat, and then also weaponizing those tokens for other things. So, I would say Mardu is probably my favorite color combination, and I try to always have a deck that fits this color pie. Atali does everything this deck wants to do. It makes tons of tokens, it buffs itself up, and then its effect is doubled by Ishin. Aurelia the War Leader. This art is super sick. Probably one of the most powerful one-off spells in this deck, and if you can double up on its effect with Ishin, it's gonna end the game very, very quickly. Boros Charm, we've talked about it before, but when you're committing a lot of creatures to the board, and you will be with this deck more so than any other deck in my collection that we've gone through, it's very important that we have ways to save it from board wipes. So this is going to almost always be going on the game mode of saving your stuff. Idol of Oblivion allows you to draw cards whenever you create tokens. So again, weaponizing our tokens in other ways than just being little 1/1 dinky beaters is very important to continue the party going. And then Brutal Horde Chief. So this is a good example of how to win the game without physically hitting someone with your tokens. This allows you to just deal damage based on attacking. So pretty straightforward. Ishin's obviously a super dope looking samurai, and I love the Mardu color pie. There's also a Ruinous Ultimatum in here, because why not? Vivv. Super controversial as to how powerful this card is. I'm not going to sit here and glaze it for 10 minutes. It's pretty obvious. This is probably the most powerful commander printed in recent memory alongside Shorikai. This is making its way into CDH, and it's probably too powerful for casual in my opinion. I consider this one a bracket 4 deck because it's not fully optimized to be bracket 5 with all of the free counter spells and the heuristic studies, but it does pack a punch. It does have win conditions. Things like intuition, being able to find your 3 curiosity effects. I'm not even going to explain this combo because pretty much every YouTube channel on the planet has done so, but you take this and you put it here and it's really good for you. So intuition and gifts ungiven to find those things. We do have breach lines. We do play Mox Diamond, Lotus Petal, and the heck is the name of that blue spell that mills? The storm mill card. I don't know why I can't think of the name of it, but we do play breach lines as a main win condition. We do have a couple of free counter spells, not all of them, but we have Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting SWAT. Like I said, it's not fully optimized and playing all the ones that are possible, but when you do like Gifts Ungiven, for example, typically we're only playing Tandem Lookout, Curiosity, and Ophidian Eye. If you Gifts Ungiven, your pile's going to be those 3 things and then like a Fierce Guardianship, so that way you're always going to get one of your Curiosity effects and still be able to protect what you're doing with something like this. Pyretic Ritual, getting Vivv out as fast as possible, ideally consistently on turn 2, is going to put you way ahead. I think I've played this deck maybe 3 times, and every time I'm winning the game on turn 3 or 4, Vivv's massive, I'm generating a ton of mana, the deck is going absolutely nuts. I would say this is easily my most powerful deck behind Garb and if I added a couple of more cards, could easily be in the conversation for CDH. Next, we have Atali Primal Conqueror. So this deck is only looking to do two things. We are looking to cast Atali as fast as possible. Things like Geosurge, Rituals, Treasonous Ogre. Don't be afraid to pay 21 life and get your Atali out. And then we are looking to weaponize. Well, I guess first we're looking to make sure the Atali resolves. So ramp to Atali, protect the Atali when it resolves, or on cast, and then weaponize his enter the battlefield triggers. So whether that's through Panharmonicon or Rionia, Molten Duplication, insert a copy a creature spell here, but this deck really doesn't have a win condition on its own. Obviously you can attack with Atali, but besides that I'm not playing any like really big creatures to hit in here personally. This is literally just looking to cast Atali as fast as possible, and then the next turn copy it 2 to 3 times, and just hope I can overwhelm my opponents with so much advantage by casting 4 spells off each iteration of Atali that I just bury everyone in card advantage. Last but certainly not least, and the deck that I've had the longest, Lord Windgrace. I would say this is in contention and probably a little bit above my Kami deck as my favorite commander deck of all time. Lands is the best thing to be doing in Commander. It's the most fun thing to be doing in Commander, at least to me. I love Jund colors. I love what Lord Windgrace is trying to do, and he's a house cat, so how can you not like him? So Life from the Loam, the best card in the deck, pretty much the reason I play the deck. Extremely fun card to play with. If you've never dredged before, if you've never played a land deck before, I highly recommend it. It's very easy to build it extremely powerful. What I will say is a big difference between my Windgrace deck and most people's is I'm not playing win conditions like Avenger of Zendikar. I am actually winning by buying time. So I am board wiping basically as often as possible, and I'm also protecting myself with things like Constant Mists, so I can sacrifice a land to buy this back and basically just fog for a combat, and then we're playing tons of ways to get lands out of our graveyard, so essentially weaponizing our lands for multiple uses. We're playing around 42 lands in the deck, I believe. The most powerful one, I guess in a nutshell, is Dark Depths. Being able to make a 20/20 flying indestructible creature every turn of the game is hard to deal with, to say the least. We can very easily get to a stage of the game where we are able to play like 3 to 4 lands a turn, and you can get this and your Thespian stage out of the graveyard and basically just do it again and again and again until your opponents run out of answers. So I would say Dark Depths alongside Field of the Dead are the two most singularly powerful lands. The 2 lands I didn't put in this pile but are extremely important to the game plan is Urborg and Cabal Coffers. If you don't know what those do, give them a Google, but basically it essentially doubles your mana, and they're both lands that interact with each other and pretty much break each other open. So what this deck is looking to do is tutor up Urborg and Cabal Coffers as fast as possible, generate between like 25 and 30 mana, and then win with something like a Torment of Hailfire for X is like 25. So we have this, we also have Cut to Ribbons, we also have Exsanguinate as the major win conditions. And again, there's no Avenger Zendikar, there's not even a Scoot Swarm in here. This is literally just board wipes, extra land drops, win the game with a giant X spell. A great example of extra land drops, probably the best one there is, Oracle Moldai, allows you to play an extra land and able to look at the top and play from the top as well. So very, very powerful card. Again, I would say normally in Commander I'm playing around 37 lands for my decks. Lord Windgrace is closer to anywhere from 42 to 45 depending on the iteration that he's built. And there's tons of different ways to build them. There will probably come a time where I take out some of the board wipes and I lean back into the Avenger of Zendikar type win conditions. But as of right now, I'm pretty happy with how it plays out. And your friends typically don't like it, but I tell you what, casting a Torment of Hailfire for X equals 30 really, really scratches an itch you didn't know you had. But that's it. I know this has been a ton of yapping, but again, this is just a love letter to Commander, to my decks, giving you guys a look into what I'm playing, my thought processes. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Godspeed.